Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Professor.
Yeah, good afternoon, Gayon.
Good afternoon, Professor.
Yeah, you're Korean, right? Gayon.
Yes, Professor.
Oh, but your accent a little bit different from normal Koreans, ordinary Koreans. Pretty,
Oh,
pretty,
because
yeah, because,
I have studied in India for 3 years during my during my high school ages, so
ah,
maybe that's the reason. Maybe.
so your accent is a kind of mixture of a British accent and Indian accent, right?
Yeah, and I have studied in Anglo-Indian schools, so I have met a lot of British and Indian though, so
Uh-huh.
my accent is.
I see, I see. Yeah, so yeah, I catch it because your accent was pretty different. Yeah, so now I can see your, yeah, and I can see why. Yeah. It's pretty, yes, it's not quite easy to find use British accent in Korea. I mean, especially
Yeah,
like
because
Korean people.
Korean things, American English is better than
Better than
learning. Yeah, so.
yeah, it sounds very I mean, I've been to I studied in the UK. So
Oh,
yeah, it was
nice place to be.
yeah.
It's pretty places.
Okay, how long did you spend there in India?
I have studied in my 16 to 18 in Korea, so 3 years.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Not that long, but
No,
it
no,
was
yeah,
enough to learn things.
yeah. I think you are quite get used to yeah using British accent.
Yeah, because I was the only Korean in there. We
Hmm.
had foreign students, but we don't have any other people from the Korea, so that's the
Hmm.
reason maybe. So
What a perfect circumstance. Yeah. Yeah.
was
Great. Hmm. So then you come back to Korea, right?
yeah, I came back to Korea, come to study in Korea University.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So you're planning of going over abroad after finishing the degree?
Hopefully, because I have studied in India, so I just want to go back to India again one day, maybe,
Oh.
hopefully,
Hmm. You miss India, living in India.
because I have some friends and had a lot of great experience over there.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I see. Great. Nice talking to you. Great.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. The biggest risk is not taking any risk. It's kind of a little bit sounds like cliche, but I think this is kind of a true, right? So if you do not take a risk, it means that you do not challenge anything, right? So if you do not challenge anything, that whether you fail or succeed, there will be no improvement. Okay, so life is not about um, success or failure. It's about more about challenging. Okay, or challenging many things. Okay, so, in that sense, the biggest risk is not to take a risk or try to avoid taking risk. Okay, especially you guys are very young. So if you are young, then there's a lot of room for failure. Okay, even if you guys fail, there's a lot of time, okay, to make up for your failure. Okay, first of all, yeah, today we have 3 topics questions from previous lecture, and then risk and return, and we're gonna discuss a little bit capital market efficiency. First of all, I don't know if you guys had a chance to in other classes you may have heard about this training, the 2022 Students Violence Prevention Training. So please visit your LMS to find out this training for 22 violence prevention education. So if you finished, then please send me a screenshot of the completed videos. Okay, this is compulsory. 20th October. So today is okay. We have only 3 days. Okay, please. Midterm exam. So we're gonna have midterm exam next Thursday. Okay. Same time as our class time, 2:30 to 4 p.m. So I'm gonna send you email. I'm gonna send you the exam, the paper by email, and then you're gonna send me back. Yeah, by email before 4 p.m. If there's if you is there anyone who have some problem with receiving my invitation, the Zoom invitation email, then please let me know. Okay, people this exam. Otherwise, you guys don't have fair to receive my email. Okay. You're going to have 10 questions, 5 multiples, 5 short answers. Okay. Stock valuation. Okay, stock valuation is the last topic you should cover for this midterm exam. Any questions about midterm exam?
No, sir.
Okay. When you submit the vibe, please please use PDF or PPT file. Okay.
I'm sorry, Professor. I would like to precise some moments about the examination. It will be on LMS platform or not?
It will be, sorry?
The examination, I mean midterm exam, will be on LMS platform or not?
Not LMS platform. I'm gonna send you email, okay, attaching the exam paper. So no, not LMS platform.
Okay, it will be a personal mail for each of our group, and
Sobridge email. You
so
guys,
yeah, so I mean Sobridge mail, yeah. Thank you, Professor. And it will be a sort of PPT file or PDF file with questions, and after when the time of exam is up, we need to send back you a file with answers, right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna send you the file by email, probably 2/29. Okay. And then you should finish the exam and the train. Check out your answers and then submit the answer. Submit the file with the answers. Okay. By 4 p.m. Okay. So in PDF file or PPT file. That's what I need. So you have a one. You have a 1.5 hours. Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
Mhm. So I do not supervise you guys taking the exam, but yeah, I believe in you guys. So please do not cheat during the exam. Okay. So previously, I asked you guys to think over these questions. Hopefully you guys had a time to think over these questions. The MPB and IRR rules, some people, this is about MPB rules. Some people believe firmly, even passionately, that ranking projects on IRR is okay if each project cash flows can be reinvested at the project IRR. They also say, first one, ranking project IRR is okay if project cash flow. They also say the MPB rule assumes that cash flows are reinvested at the opportunity cost of capital. Think carefully about this statement. Are they true? Are they helpful? Okay, so first one and second one. So are they true? Ranking project on IRR is okay if a project's cash flows can be reinvested at project IRR. Is true? Is this true? Barry Lee, is this true? The first statement. Barry Lee, you're there, Barry Lee. No, Mikhail Kuznetsov, you are there. Okay, where I think the ranking project on IRR, if you have a multiple project, so mutually exclusive project. Mutually exclusive project means that you should take either mutually. Sorry. Okay, let's say you have a project. Let's say you have project A and B. Okay, so you should, if you take a project A, you cannot take B. If you take B, you cannot take A. So in that case, you can say this A and B are mutually exclusive project. Okay. So then, well, if IRR, yes, first of all, you calculate the IRR. You know what IRR is, right? You basically understand the concept of IRR. IRR is the rate that makes the present value of cash flows from each project zero, right? So if cost of capital is lower than, if IRR is higher than the cost of capital for the project, then the project is going to be profitable, right? That's the concept you should understand about the IRR, internal rate of return. Then the calculation should be done using the financial calculator or the Excel, right? So calculating itself, it does not matter, okay? Because we have all the tools. But what matters is whether you understand the concept of this term, internal rate of return, IRR, right? So let's say, but when we have have choices of A and B, then let's say product A is 10% to IRR and product B is a 12% to IRR, right? So then, okay, 12% IRR is higher than 10%. So then you may prefer product B, right? Because it has a higher IRR, internal rate of return. So then it means that product B may have more maybe more profitable, right? But is this true? Really true? Let's take a look at this. So as you remember, in the previous lecture, let's say we have a project B, and the project A's IRR is 29%, and project B's IRR is 23%. So solely based on IRR, you are supposed to take project A, right? But if the required rate of return cost of capital is, let's say, 5%, okay, then NPV, project B has a higher NPV than project A, right? So ranking the project only based on the IRR, they cause some conflict with the results based on the NPV, okay? Why? Because of the timing of cash flow, okay? Even though project A has a higher cash flow, let's say 70, that's gonna, oh, okay, this one is not. Let's make this same. Okay. Okay, using these numbers, just based on the IRR and based on IRR, if you take product A because it's a higher IRR, that has a conflict with the results based on the NPV, as we can see here, right? The main reason for this conflict is the timing of cash flow. As you can see, project A has more cash flow in the early stage of the project, and project B has more cash flow in the later stage of the project. So that makes the difference between difference between the two projects in terms of NPV. Okay. So when you have more cash flow in the later years and the lower required rate of return, then the project B is gonna be less affected by this required rate of return. But as the required rate of return is getting higher, then this lower the cash flow in the later stage will be more affected by the higher required rate of return. So that's why if the required rate of return getting higher, then the project B's NPV is getting lower than the project A's. So anyway, the whole point is that okay. Whole point is that ranking project IRR is okay if a project cash flows can be reinvested at the project IRR. Okay, even though project cash flows can be reinvested at the project IRR, simply ranking the project based on the IRR may not be okay, right? Because of even because of the one of the reasons is that the timing of the cash flow makes difference when it comes to the NPV, okay? Depending on what cost of capital is gonna be used, okay? So may not be, this is not true and not really helpful, okay? You guys get it? And the second statement, the NPV rule assumes that cash flows are reinvested at the opportunity cost of capital. Where, let's take a look at it again. This is project A. I calculate the future value of a project A based on this cash flow, okay? If you double click, then you can see the formula. So if I reinvest means that what the reinvestment 5% cost of capital means that the return, if the cash flows you have, let's say year one, will be reinvest has the rate of return over 5% over the remaining period of this project. So reinvestment at 5% of this, for example, $60 in year one is going to be future value of this 60 until the end of this project, right? So if you add all of this future value based on the 5% of reimbursement rate, then you're gonna have 185 for project A, project B 189, right? So then result is still B, right? Based on the future value, based on the assumption that the cash flows will be reinvested at the internal cost of capital 5%, for example, then still as we use the net present value, project B is better than project A, right? So yeah, NPV, if the cash flows are reinvested at the cost of capital, the result based on the NPV or reinvestment rate, or based on all this assumption is the same. Okay, whether you want to take an NPV or whether you take the assumption that the cash flows are reinvested at the cost of capital, the same. Basically, what I'm saying is that NPV is based on the present value, right? And this assumption kind of based on the future value. Okay, but as long as but NPV also using they discount cash flows using the cost of capital, right? So the only difference is whether you are compare the present value, or whether you take compare present value of each project, right? So basically, the result is same, right? As far as the cash, we use the same cash flow of each project. So NPV does not need any assumption of a reinvestment rate, basically, because the result is same, right? So not very helpful, actually. Yeah, it is not necessary to assume that cash flows are reinvested at the opportunity cost of capital, because whatever rate you're going to use, NPV result is the same, unlike IRR. Okay. So basically, the second statement is that not actually don't have to assume that cash flows are reinvested at the opportunity cost capital. Not necessary. So not very helpful. Okay. So both statements are not really helpful. And the first one, second one is not necessary, a bit useless, and the first one is kind of a wrong, could be misleading. Okay, because of the timing of cash flow could cause conflict. The result between IRR and NPV, as you just saw. Okay, any question? I just saw my hands raised up. No question? Do you guys understand?
Yeah.
Yes, Professor.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So if you have time, please try to use this Excel to understand better, okay? So I took some questions from the textbook. The project has following cash flow: year one, year zero, $112,000. Year one, minus $67,000. Year two, $57,000. So what is the IRR for this project? This project is a little bit strange from, yes, strange, right? Initially, you had a negative amount rather than positive, but this time we have a positive and the cash flow is negative. If the required return is 10%, should the firm accept the project? What is the NPV of this project? What is the NPV of the project if the required return 0%, 20%, 24%? What is going on here? Sketch the NPV profile to help you with the answer. So I already did start with this question. So you can see okay. We have these cash flows and the IRR using the, if you go to, IRR. So I use this formula. So the IRR is 7.27%. Okay. So if you discount these cash flows using 7.27, then you're gonna have a 0 present value, net present value. Okay. Then the question was, IRR is 7.27, right? And should the firm accept the project if the recovery is 10%? My mouse is running out of battery. 10%. If you recovery return 10%, then NPV is positive, right? Where just a minute. Recovery return is higher than IRR. I mean, previously we understood that IRR is supposed to be higher than the cost of capital recovery return for the project to be accepted, right? But this time, when the required return is higher than the IRR, NPV is positive, and we actually supposed to take the project when the NPV is positive, right? So basically say yes. You should say yes. Okay. And what is the NPV of the project if required rate with 0%, 24%? Okay. So let's see. 0% when required rate of 0% lower than internal rate of return, then we have a negative on their present value. So then suppose not take the project. And if the required rate higher than much higher than internal rate of return, then we have a much higher net present value. So the reason is that the initial investment is positive and the cash flow is negative. So previously, we assumed that the company is a borrower, okay? They borrow money, and then they generate cash flows in the future, right? So in that situation, as a borrower, then recovery return should be lower than internal rate of return for the project to be positive. But this time, initial investment is positive, which means that this case is not based on the does not take a prospect of borrower, but lender. Okay, so in this cash flow is based on the assumption that you're gonna be a lender rather than borrower. Okay, so then as a lender, required return is the lending rate, right? Lending rate. So as the lending rate is getting higher and higher, then the bank, for example, bank as a lender is going to make more profit, right? So this is the situation. That's why required return is higher than internal rate of return. You have a positive net present value, and suppose take this the project. So if the initial investment is positive and the cash flow is negative, then you have cash, okay, and you lend the money to borrower, okay. So then the formula for the basis of the decision basis is reversed, okay, reversed from the case where you are borrower, okay. So in this case, internal rate of return should be lower than current rate of return for the project to be positive or to be accepted. Understand? Any questions?
It's understandable for me.
Okay, no question. Great. Question 2. This is also from textbook. Eurozone Corporation wants to set up a private cemetery business. According to CFO, business is looking up. As a result, the cemetery project will provide a net cash inflow of $164,000 for the firm during first year, and the cash flows are projected to grow at a rate of 4.7% per year forever. The project requires initial investment of $1.8 to $5,000 million. Yeah. If the company requires a rate of 12% of such undertakings, should the cemetery business be started up? Okay, so we simply need to use MPB, right, for the answer to A. And the company is somewhat unsure about the assumption of a 4.7% growth rate in its cash flows. And what constant growth rate would the company just break even if it is still required a rate of return of 12% investment? Okay, question A is pretty simple, right? If the required return is 12%, then yeah, you can. We need to simply. I think it's better to use MPB, right? It's better. Well, you may also use IRR, but we can take both of them to answer A. But I used the MPB. Okay. So initial investment, right? 1.8 to 5,000, 1.8 to 5 million, right? And then the first year, the cash flow is $164,000, right? Okay. And growth rate is 4.7%. After first year, the cash flow will grow at a 4.7%, right? At a rate of 4.7%. So then, okay. Then you guys remember how to calculate the terminal value using the growth rate and recurring rate of return. So recurring rate of return is currently 12%, right? So then this is the year 1 cash flow, right? So the year 2 cash flow is, and further on, year 2 cash flow is year 1 cash flow multiplied by 1 plus growth rate, right? And this amount will be divided by growth rate and the recurring rate of return minus growth rate. So then you have the terminal value of this the terminal value of the project of the remaining period. Okay, at the point of year 1, right? So year 1, you have a cash flow of $164,000, and you have a terminal value of this amount, up to this amount. Okay. Year 2 cash flow divided by recurring rate of return minus the growth rate. Okay, this is the value for the remaining period. Okay. So then you should discount both $164,000 and this amount at 12%, right? So then you want to have the present value of the cash flows, or the cash flows, year 1 and the remaining period. Okay. So this is the present value, year 1 and remaining period. Then you have a total present value of this amount, and the net present value is positive. So then you are supposed to take this project. Okay. And the company is unsure about 4.7% growth rate. So they are not sure about whether the cash flow will grow at 4.7%. So then the question is, at what constant growth rate would the company just break even if it still require 12% of investment? Okay, so then the question is, okay, what if the required rate of return, the cost of capital is 12%? Then how much the cash flow should grow for the company to break even? Okay, so then logically speaking, right? Okay, so then I think you may think that, okay, so then where break even means that NPV is supposed to be 0, right? Right? So you need to find out the growth rate that makes NPV 0, right? Sounds easy, easier said and done, but the question is just break even. So you just need to have ballpark numbers, right? Because the question is just break even. So where, as far as this, we don't know. We know this year 1 cash flow, right? But what we don't know is the cash flow after year 1, right? So we don't know this amount. We don't know this amount, right? We have this amount, 164,000 without before discounted, and present value 146. So whether you're using this amount or whether you're using this present value amount, what we need to do is that the value after year 1 supposed to be, based on this one, supposed to be 1.6 before discounted, $1.61 billion. So then if the value, if the cash flow after year 1 is $1.661 million, then we have almost the company is going to almost break even, right? Sounds radical. If you're using present value, right? if the present value after year 1 is 1.97 million, then the present value is going to be 0, which means that the company is going to break even, right? I think so, right? So then the question is growth rate. The growth rate where simply this is the initial investment, right? So if we divided this value after year 1 with this initial investment, right? Oh, sorry. Growth rate. And if you divide this difference by the initial amount, and then you're gonna have a break-even amount. But just a minute, there's something wrong. This, just a minute. Initial investment of 1.8 million. 1.8 million. And minus. And yeah, minus. Yeah. Sorry, minus 1. And minus 1. Okay. Oh, should not be. It's gonna. Okay. Should it be? Okay, so based on this calculation, this one should be yours minus. Yeah. Okay. I think you'd better using this present value. So based on the present, if you use the present value, then if you divided this difference by the total amount, total investment, initial investment, then you're gonna have roughly the growth rate of 8%. Okay, so if you use 8% the growth rate, not this one, 8% growth rate, then the NPV is not gonna be 0, but close to 0. Okay, so as you know, as the growth rate is higher, getting higher, then the present value is gonna be higher, right? So as far as growth rate is 8.2%, so then the project is gonna be acceptable. Okay. That's what you need to, that's how you need to interpret this question. Okay, so this question does not require you to calculate the exact the growth rate that makes the present value zero, net present value zero, for the company to break even, but just roughly what the future value of cash flow, the value of the future cash flow of the project over the remaining period should be in comparison with initial investment. Okay, so that is the rate of the rate based on the calculation is gonna be roughly the growth rate of the project. Okay, so this is about more about the concept of growth rate. How you approach it, the growth rate of the project. Okay, get it? Any questions? Oksana, you guys, do you understand? Do you follow me? Oksana?
Yes, Professor.
Okay. Question 3. Puppy's Potato has come up with a new product, the project pad. The Puppies paid $120,000 for a marketing survey to determine the viability of the product. It is fair that Potato Pad will generate a sales of $835,000 per year, and fixed costs associated with this will be $204,000 per year, and the variable cost will amount to 20% of sales. The equipment necessary for production of the Potato Pad will cost $865,000 and will be depreciated in a straight line manner over the 4 years for the 4 year of product life. With this or bad, it is fair the sales will end quickly. This is the only initial cost for the production. Puppy has a tax rate of 23% and required of 13%. Calculate the payback period, NPV and IRR. So this is a question requiring you to calculate the cash flows and payback period, NPV and IRR. Okay. Okay, so based on the information, we have a sales amount, okay, $835,000 per year, and fixed cost and the variable cost. We have two types of cost: fixed cost and the variable. Variable cost is 20% of sales, right? So 20% of sales, and the fixed cost is $204,000 per year. Okay, and then we have also depreciation expense. Depreciation expense is based on straight line method, so we need to divide this $865,000 of this equipment with the four because the life of this equipment is 4 years. Okay, after 4 years, after the life of the equipment ended, then the sales will also end. Okay, so normal sales. So straight line method, using straight line method, the depreciation is calculated dividing the cost of this equipment by 4. Okay, then you have profit before tax. Okay, so you under the accounting, you deduct a variable cost, fixed cost, and the depreciation expenses. Then you multiply tax rate of 23%, right? Apply 23% to this profit before tax. Then you have tax, and the tax is going to be cash. Then paid in cash. Then you have a profit after the tax. Okay. So this is a annual cash flow. Okay. So as long as the all the numbers are the same, annual cash flow will be the same. Not that annual cash flow, so annual profits. Okay. So then the question is, NPV, a payback, IRR, right? So that we need to calculate the cash flow from operations. So initial investment is $865,000, right? The equipment, okay? That's the initial investment. What about this $120,000 marketing? This amount should be also included as part of the initial investment to be recovered in the future? What do you think? Maggie, do you think this $20,000 of a marketing survey should be included as part of the initial investment? Maggie, you're there? Aitalina, you are there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so $112,000 marketing survey should be included as part of the initial investment. Do you think so?
I don't know.
Sorry?
I don't know.
Oh yeah, could it be yes or no with any reason? Okay, so marketing survey to determine the viability of the product. So this marketing survey, the marketing cost to determine this viability of the product is not part of the initial investment, because this survey cost is going to be just the expenses, whether or not the product is going to take or not. Okay, it is called the sunk cost. So this cost of $112,000 expense for this marketing survey is not considered a kind of investment to be recovered from this project. It is just the expense. I mean, even though you do not take this project, this cost cannot be recovered, right? So $112,000 is not part of the initial investment as a sunk cost. So we have initial investment of $865,000 for equipment cost, right? Equipment. So you need to calculate the cash flow each year. So what we need to add is only depreciation expenses, right? Depreciation expenses is not cash flow. Okay, only the accounting expenses, right? So if you add depreciation expenses to profit after tax, then you have this cash flow. And based on this cash flows initial investment, you can calculate NPV and IRR. Okay. So if the required return is let's say 30%, then you are supposed to take this project because the IRR is 31%, right? So we have a positive NPV. Okay, I think you guys understand. Any questions related to this question? No? Okay. I hope you guys to have time to solve these questions. Okay, please. I'm gonna also send the answers to this question later, but before that, I hope you guys will have some time to think over these questions, okay? Which will be helpful for you guys to understand the capital budgeting, okay, better. Now we are entering risk and return part. Risk and return. Okay, risk and return. Everything is about taking a risk for return, to pursue return. Okay, especially capital market, right? Is all about taking risk for return. So when you say capital market, we usually means the equity and bond market, right? So the sources of return, we are talking about return. Sources of return when it comes to equity market, if you buy a stock, right? The main sources of return is going to be dividends, right? If you buy bonds, then the main source of return would be a coupon payments, okay? But if you sell the securities of a stock or bond, then you're gonna also have another sources of return, which is the capital gains, or sometimes you may lose money. So capital loss is also negative source of return. So you have two sources of return in the capital market. One is dividends or coupon payments, or capital gains or losses. Okay, so these are the main sources of return in the capital market. If you have dividends, then you can calculate the yield based on this dividend amount divided by initial investment. The dividend yield is going to be, as we did for this question, right? For this question, constant growth rate, right? We simply divided the cash flow amount required by the initial investment, right? The growth rate could be interpreted as a yield. The cash flow yield, something like that. So if you divide dividend by initial investment, then you're going to have a dividend. The dividend yield is going to be a little bit similar to the growth rate of a dividend, right? And the gains or losses, if you divide the gain or losses with initial investment, then you're going to have a capital gains yield. So this is going to be return rates. If you add this dividend and capital gains and divide the investment, then you want to have a total rate of return on your investment. Okay, because these are the sources of your return. Okay, so if you add this to dividend yield and capital gains yield, then you have total rate of return on your investment in capital in the stocks or bonds. Okay, in case of bonds, it's going to be bonds. Okay, so this is roughly about the return from your investment in capital market of equity and the bond market, equity bond capital market. Here, this is the one way to calculate yield, but this is, as said here, just 1 year yield, okay? Because dividend amount is just using this dividend amount, just 1 year dividend amount. So dividend, this dividend is could be called current yield. But if you really want to know the actual return over the long period of investment period, then you should use the geometric average return. Geometric average return is it's like the effective rate of return. So you guys remember how to calculate effective rate of return, effective interest rate. Effective interest rate is you multiply interest rate over some specific period, constantly, right? So let's say let's say this R is interest rate. Interest rate is a return on your deposit, right? So if you have interest every month, right? So then the effective interest rate supposed to be interest rate will be calculated by multiplying monthly interest rate 12 times. Okay, then you're gonna have an annual effective interest rate. Multiply 12 times and -1, right? So then you're gonna have effective interest rate. You guys remember? The same logic applies to this geometric average return. The only difference is that this time, okay, previously effective rate is okay, right? My mouse is, let's say, just a 2 year effective interest rate, right? -1, right? This was the effective interest rate. Okay, but this time, what we need to know is okay. This time we, let's say, not this way. Let's say average rate return is RA, okay, and you move this -1 to here, +1, right? Then you have right, and then same, and then this component come here, right? Then you have a multiple different rate of return for each period, right? For each period. Oh, sorry. So, but if you then as long as we are gonna have this rate of each period, right? But what we like to know is this RA. Okay, the single rate of return over some period, right? That is the geometric average rate of return. Okay, so one way to solve this is if you put log, then you may be able to calculate this array, but this is a very mathematical process. But one thing, but what you should get from this formula is that each period you're going to have a different rate of return, but based on this formula, we want to know one single average rate of return over the period. Okay, this is the geometric average return. As geometric average return is, we simply add each return and divide it by number of period, right? So that is not pretty precise. So we do not use this average arithmetic average, but we use the geometric average return. Okay, that is another way. That is the way to calculate return when you have more than 1 year investment period. Okay. That you just need to roughly understand what geometric average return is. That's all. Okay. This is one example. You can also calculate a geometric average return using the Excel. Okay. Here. Let's say period 1, period 2, period 1, period 2, period 3, and period 4, period 5. Okay, so you have 11% return, and after that, based on this amount, after 1 year, you have another return 37.1, right? And 43, and negative in your fourth year, negative fifth year, 25% decrease in return. So then if you 1 plus R, right? Like this. Right? As we did here. Like this, right? And then geometric mean, you go to formula. Geometry. Geometry mean. Here, so if you go to statistics, you can find the geometric mean, right? Using this geometric mean, you can calculate this and then -1. Then you have a geometric average return, 8.26. Okay, this is a one way to calculate the geometric return using the Excel. So you should understand this geometric returns. Most the average return over the period when the each return or during the period is the return for each specific period is different. Using this formula, you can find one average return over the some period of the investment period. Okay. So as long as you understand the concept, then simply use Excel or calculator to find out the geometric average return. Okay. Yeah, the geometric sequence is exponential form because we have this. We're going to use the single rate. Okay. Suppose the stock had an initial price of what time is it? Suppose the stock had an initial price of $87 per share, paid a dividend 2.815. Then so then you the ending price is 98. So what is the capital? What is the how to calculate the return? How to calculate return? Hey, how to calculate return? I think you guys are pretty silent. How to calculate return? Hey, Paulina, you're there? Hey, Paulina, you are there?
Professor, I'm here. I'm
Okay.
just opening my notes.
How to calculate this? How to calculate the return based on this the yield, the dividend yield? How to calculate dividend yield?
Return of investment. We need to divide net income by the cost of investment.
And what was the dividend yield here from this question?
Dividend yield. Give me a second. I'm checking my notes. I'm not sure, but 2.15.
Okay. 2.15.
Yes.
Yeah. Divided by 87.
87.
Right. Then you want to have the dividend yield, right? This is going to be dividend yield. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Okay. So what is going to be capital gains yield?
Capital gains yield. Dividend yield divided by 98.
Capital gains yield. How to calculate capital gains yield?
I'm not sure, but final sale price.
Yeah. 98.
98. Minus 87, but no, I'm not sure. Yes, minus 87 divided by 2.15.
And we divided by 87.
Why again by 87?
Why 87?
Yes.
Because we are talking about yield. Yield means return, right? So yield always means sorry, my mouse does not work. Yield always what do you have earned, for example, dividend or capital gain, right? And your initial investment should come in the denominator. Then you have return, right? So our initial investment $87, right? $87 is our initial investment. That's why we should then, if we divided the capital gains with $87, if we divide the dividend with this 87 initial amount, then we have dividend return on dividend, dividend return, and the capital return, the capital gains return. Okay.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Okay. So if you add these two, then you have a total return, right? Total return. Total. Sorry, my mouse does not work. Total return. If you, yeah. So in this case, yeah, there was normal dividends. It has just 2.515 dividend, and then this is it seems like the stock was sold at $98. So then we have, this is gonna be the dividend yield, and the capital gains is gonna be total, could be total yield, total return. Okay, this shows the graphs. Historical returns for each investment. So if you have small company stocks or large company stocks or long-term government bonds or treasury bills, so you have this trend of return. So as you can see, small companies has shows a higher return than large companies, right? The long-term government bonds has a lower return than small companies or large company stock. And treasury bills also has a lower return than long-term government bonds. So what this return tells that what this return graph tells is that the small company stocks has higher risk than large company stocks, and large company stocks has higher return to long-term government bonds, and long-term government bonds has higher risk. Sorry, higher risk than treasury bills. So return and the risk has a positive relationship. Okay, higher return means higher risk. Okay, so intuitively speaking, small companies usually supposed to have a higher risk than large companies, right? So to compensate for higher risk, their return usually shows higher than that of large companies stocks. Okay, so from this graph you can see not just the return but also risk. Okay. Risk, we have two types of risk. One is risk-free rate. Okay, two types, not two types of risk. Okay, basically, we have a risk-free rate, and on top of this risk-free rate, if you have any risk, then premiums will be added to this risk-free rate. Where it is a little bit questionable that we really have any risk-free rate, but people say that these treasury bills, the government, very short-term government bill, government bond, for example, 3 months or 6 months government bond, is going to be really risk-free because the credibility pretty high and the investment period pretty short, right? So you have a very high level of security of getting your money back, right? So risk-free rate could be treasury bill in case of US. So risk-free rate is the rate of return offered by asset largely considered risk-free, such as government bonds. Where 10-year government, the government bond is considered risk-free, but what if you say really risk-free rate is pretty short-term treasury bills, something like that. Oh, where is the yield to maturity of treasury bond minus the inflation rate could be risk-free rate because the yield to maturity of treasury bond has no credit risk, but only inflation risk. So if you simply deduct inflation rate from yield to maturity of treasury bond, then you're supposed to have a risk-free rate. So this means that even the treasury bond, which is considered risk-free, has one risk, which is the inflation rate risk. Right? In practice, risk-free rate of return does not truly exist, but we usually say 3 months treasury bill or 6 months close to risk-free rate. The risk premium is additional return you require to compensate for risk. Okay, so for example, in this slide, in this graph, if you invest in small company stock, then this small company stock has more risk, right? So then you ask risk premium. When this means that you expect a higher return from the investment is small stock. So when you make a valuation of the small stock, you're gonna use more higher discount rate. Okay, that's what it means. So so when you make so before you make actual investment into this small company stock shares, you should make evaluations. When you make evaluation, you're gonna discount. If you take a DCF method, you're gonna discount cash flows using discount rate, right? But small company has a higher risk, so you're gonna use a higher discount rate, which means not only risk-free rate, but also additional rate of return, which is called risk premium. Okay. Excess return required from investment in the risky asset over required from risk-free investment. Nominal rate minus inflation, real interest rate, risk premium. Where a nominal interest rate, nominal versus real, right? You guys understand the nominal versus real. Nominal is the rate including not adjusted for inflation, but if you adjust inflation, if you eliminate if the rate is adjusted for inflation, then the the rate is going to be, the rate is called the real interest rate or real risk rate of return. Okay, risk premium, real risk rate or real risk premium. Okay, if the nominal rate is adjusted for inflation. Okay, this is just shows the change, the trends. Yeah, the risk-free rate and risk premiums of each investment. Okay. Okay. Then, how to calculate the risk? How to calculate risk? How to, rather than calculate, how to measure the risk. One way to measure risk is volatility. Okay. Risk means change in capital market, uncertainty, right? So when you have a lot of uncertainties, then the market is usually fluctuating, right? But if there's not much going on, then there's not much changes in the market. So the changes could be measured using the statistics like variance or standard deviation, right? So variance is the average squared difference between actual return and average return. So this average return could be geometric average return, right? And standard deviation is positive square root of a variance. So you guys know, you need to record the variance and the standard deviation, right? So this is the formula to calculate the variance. Simply you deduct the average return from each actual return. And that is squared, okay? And then divided by number of data points minus 1. Then you're gonna have a variance. Why do we deduct -1? Because of the we want to take this one is a variance number. I'm statistically speaking. So you don't have to memorize this formula, but just need to understand what variance means. Variance means it's how varied between the actual return and the average return, right? How much varied between the two. So then standard deviation is the positive square root of the variance. So we usually take this standard deviation to talk about risk. So the higher standard deviation, the higher the risk is. Okay. Any question up to now?
No, sir.
Okay. This is a way to calculate the variance and standard deviation using the Excel. So please have time to take a look at this Excel bar. Okay. So what I'm saying is that as far as you guys have a concept, then try to know how to use the tools, the Excel or financial calculator, to get the number, to get the result, such as a variance, standard deviation, or something like that, right? Don't have to memorize the formula. Okay. And the normal distribution, you guys also need to know about the normal distribution. Normal distribution is the where in this world where we live, if you take many samples, then in most cases they show this normal distribution. Okay, when it comes to your when it comes to the heights or weights. I mean, if you take many samples, then in most cases they show normal distribution. Okay, this is yeah, normal distribution. This is normal distribution, and in this normal distribution, this is gonna be average. So if you deviate from average by one standard deviation, or 2 standard deviation, or 3 standard deviation, the probability of the sample is included within this. I mean, the probability of the sample is included in this area is getting higher, right? As the more as the numbers as the numbers are more deviate from the average. Okay, if return, for example, in case of return, okay, we are talking about risk, right? So risk means the higher the standard deviation, the higher the risk is, right? So let's say if the return is deviates from average return, 2 standard deviation or 3 standard deviation, right? Then it is more riskier. It's getting riskier, right? So let's say return is deviated from 3 standard deviation, right? 3 standard deviation. Then 99.7% of return will be included in this area. Okay. You guys follow me?
Yes, Professor.
Okay. Just a minute. So the higher, when the return, oh, sorry, we are 38, 50. Okay, so I'm gonna start from this normal distribution from next class, in the next class, okay? So then I'm gonna cover also this capital market efficiency. Okay, so see you this Thursday. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Professor, see
Thank you,
you.
Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.